Are you tired of losing in Lorcana? Have you ever thought for just one moment that maybe it's not the actual archetype that you're playing, but some of the cards within the archetype you're really just too stuck on? Today I have 7 cards that I think you need to remove from your decks, and I guarantee you just by removing them, your deck gets better. Let's check them out. Belle Hidden Archer is a 5 cost, uninkable, 3 strength, 3 willpower, and 3 lore with shift 3. And she has the ability, Thorny Arrows. Whenever this character is challenged, the challenging character's player discards all cards in their hand. So you may be asking yourself, how is this card bad? It has every good stat you want, and it has an incredible ability that makes my opponent discard their hand. But my question is to you, does it? As a 5 cost uninkable, it's competing with a ton of other Emerald options that are flat out always good rather than just occasionally good. Her 3/3 stat line leaves her vulnerable to way more removal than the average 2/4 stat line that most of the 5 cost uninkables have, and not to mention several of them have ward, and even now with Pete, they're inkable. The 3 lore looks nice, which is great. However, not as, appealing when you realize that she's a 3/3. The shift 3 seemingly doesn't matter at all because all of her shift targets are almost non-existent, or they're in colors that you're not necessarily wanting to play in the discard route anyway, and they're definitely not in position to be able to shift this on 3. You're always going to be, at the very least, shifting it on 4. And on top of that, you're not ever really capitalizing on singing anything with Emerald currently, so that doesn't help either. And of course, the most shockingly thing about all of this, Thorny Arrows is way too late in the game for you to even truly utilize it. And again, because there are so many efficient ways to remove her without even having to challenge her, the ability likely never does anything at all. And lastly, she's incredibly overpriced for a legendary, for a character that shouldn't even see play in any deck, let alone one that you should be paying $40 or $50 for per single one. Yep, not too big of a fan of Belle. Honestly, early on, she was one of the cards that were spoiled. The art is incredibly awesome. I love it. But the card, just not good enough. I would much rather play like 3 other 5 cost characters before I played this one in Emerald. And I definitely would never rely on Thorny Arrows to ever be relevant. And the 3 toughness is just definitely not good enough to even think for one moment that you're going to get by ever getting more than 3 lore with this character, even if you get that because she doesn't have ward. Madame Mim, Rival of Merlin, is a 5 cost, inkable, 2 strength, 5 willpower, 2 lore, amethyst character with the ability of Shift 3 and Gruesome and Grim, which reads, Exert, play a character with cost 4 or less for free. They gain rush at the end of the turn, banish them. The 5 cost 2/5 inkable stat line is honestly really closer to being a 4 cost character than a 5 cost character, specifically with the addition of 2 lore. Her shift 3 is fine, but most of the shift targets you have for her likely don't last through a turn. So you have to specifically make interesting play lines to really even utilize it. In a world where you want to shift over a snake, you also have to have a 1 cost character on 1, so then you can bounce it back with snake and then be able to Madame Mim over snake and then start utilizing Gruesome and Grim. But in all honesty, when you start looking at all of the play lines I just mentioned to even get this character into play early, it just seems too cute. And not to mention, all you're doing is to just get 1 additional use out of 1 additional card, and there just isn't enough yet to really fully utilize this engine. And even later in the game, bringing in 4 cost cards with Rush most of the time isn't going to be good enough to make the trades that you want to anyway. It's really only fringe playable in non-Ruby decks because you don't have enough characters with Rush as is. But I'd also even argue that Pocket Watch is simply just better than this by default, being less weak to far more cards. And in all honesty, the real truth is the ability even worth it? And, this is a character that I've seen play a lot. I have had it in my decks early on, and I can never find a good use for this card. I'm very often finding its way into the inkwell, and even when I play it, the opportunity cost for utilizing its ability is really weak, all in all. So I'm just not a fan of this card at all. I have not seen much success utilizing the ability. The Shift 3 is even difficult to really get away with unless, honestly, somehow your Fox just doesn't get removed, which can happen. But the snake play and having this on 3 and then utilizing the shift right away, you're probably better off just playing some other shift 5 character if you're trying to sing songs. And her ability to just attempt to break serve with rush is, again, I just think worse than just playing pocket watch and better characters so you don't have to ever rely on Madame Mim's ability. But I digress. I think you should take her out of your Amethyst decks. Winnie the Pooh, having a think, is a 3-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 3 willpower, and 2 lore sapphire character with the ability of Honeypot. Whenever this character quests, you may put a card from your hand into your inkwell face down. So this is a character that everyone has been telling me is the replacement for Mickey Mouse Detective. Well, I'm going to strongly disagree for several reasons. While it's inkable and while it has 2 lore and 1 more strength, the ability of needing for this character to quest for you to get a card into the inkwell through you playing it like from your hand is 2 more conditional things that need to happen for this card to be better than simply playing Mickey Mouse Detective. And because of that, it requires more support than Mickey Mouse does as well. Oftentimes in Chapter 1, when you played Mickey Mouse Detective, it was in the Amber Sapphire decks, and you were actually mulliganing for the detective in your opening hand because it was important to, on turn 3, be able to play detective and accelerate yourself to have 5 resources on turn 4. Winnie the Pooh doesn't even guarantee you that to happen. Having a inkable character is wonderful, but his 3 willpower still leaves him the same vulnerabilities as Mickey Mouse Detective, which means now they're more likely to hit this with any type of damaging removal or removal in general, and you may never get an actual effect out of it. And if you're relying on having 5 ink on turn 4, then the fact this doesn't get you that in a guaranteed moment is where I kind of have to disagree. The additional concept is that you need support to even leverage this. Detective just gets to put things into play off the top of your deck. This is a character that needs the quest, and it needs more cards in your hand to be able to utilize the ability at all. For all that, just play Belle. Like, Belle doesn't even need to quest. She just lets you do it right away on turn 4 anyhow. So I'd argue that she's a way better character than this. I just don't understand the mindset of because this is inkable, it's better by default than Detective Mickey when it requires for 2 additional things to happen. 1, you need a card in your hand, and 2, you need it to honestly last a turn without being removed to even allow you to use the ability of Honeypot. Not a big fan of this card whatsoever. I think it's a gigantic reach of players just not wanting to play uninkables like Mickey Mouse. And I'm going to tell you right now that your deck probably gets better just by putting Detective back in your decks and taking Winnie the Pooh out of them. If you're enjoying this video so far, if you don't agree with me, that's totally fine. Let me know in the comments of cards that you think might be a little overrated and that players should be getting rid of in their decks. I got a couple more coming for you, but all in all, if you do like the content, hit that thumbs up for me. And if you're brand new to the channel and you might be learning something of reasons why to help your own deck building, smash that subscribe for me. Cinderella Stout-Hearted. 7-cost, inkable, 5 strength, 5 willpower, 3 lore, with the ability of Shift 5, Resist 2, and the Singing Sword. I know. I feel like I got to be a little more face to face for this one because it has to be impossible that this card's not good enough, right? It has to be. Well, sometimes it just turns out that good cards aren't good in the metagame they're in right now. And in all honesty, the metagame that we are living in, I believe this card does more harm than good to your own deck because, crazy enough, it's so situational that you can't utilize it well enough. And in all honesty, you almost need two things to happen for you to ever even utilize her ability to the fullest. And I know it sounds crazy because this character is outrageously good. I am not denying that this card is actually a very good card. I just think it's a very good card in a metagame that it's very bad into. And that's why I'm actually telling you that you should take this card out of your deck because the times when you can utilize it are just far too little. And you're better off putting in more consistent cards in your deck and removing a character that, I don't know, 1 out of 15 games might actually do what it's supposed to do or that it's designed to do. And I think that's the most problematic fear. And in all honesty, having to rely on another Cinderella being in play for you to even attempt to also have a song the same turn is a lot to ask for to get the full use out of this. And if you don't get the full use out of this, then it probably just goes away to like whatever random removal that you can think of that Ruby or Sapphire, or honestly, even in some cases now, Amethyst with Yzma are going to do to you. And I just think, sad to say, that this card is awesome and I love everything about it, but you just can't play it right now and you need to take it out of your deck. Zero to Hero is a 2-cost uninkable amber song with the ability of count the number of characters you have in play. You pay that amount of resources less for the next character you play this turn. So the 2-cost uninkable song isn't the first thing here that's the problem. It's really the fact that it might just require too much for too little. Now, what do I mean by that exactly? Cards like Lantern come into play, they stick, and they get utilization over the course of the game or until they're removed. Now, granted, I will agree that there's far more Benjin in the metagame, and you might be weary of that, so you might have found a reason to come play Zero to Hero. But I'm here to tell you that I think Zero to Hero is a straight trap. I mean, it just requires you to have a perfect hand and assume that your opponent has zero interaction, which is a terrible line of thinking and competitively is never going to happen. You're seeing more and more decks now utilizing, Let the Storm Rage On, Strength of Raging Fire, Teeth and Ambition. The list goes on. I mean, of course, then the additional Queen of Hearts and Rush. So, if you're going to instead not quest with your characters that you should be questing with, or for what it's worth, playing characters in your Amber decks that should be questing early and being blocked with Zimba and things like that, then you're already at a whole other deck design flaw. But even in that world, your cards still might not see the light of day past the first couple turns for you to say, okay, I'm going to play 1, 2, and 3 cost characters, and then on turn 4, I'm going to play a 1-cost character, and then I'm going to play Zero to Hero, and then I'm going to play a 6-cost for 2. It's like, you can hope that that's going to happen, or you can just not ever rely on that and just play better cards and just play Lantern and say, if my opponent has Benjin, then my Lantern's not as good. I'm definitely for the latter half. I'd rather play cards that are always good than trying to make this card work some small portion of the time. That's just me, but I think that your deck gets a lot better if you check this one and you throw it out of your deck. Cheshire Cat from the Shadows is an 8-cost inkable, 5 strength, 6 willpower, and 2 lore emerald character with Shift 5, evasive, and the ability of Wicked Smile, which is exert this, banish chosen damage character. So the first problem with this character is Shift 5 is a really high number. An 8-cost character with Shift 5 seems fair. It is slightly better than the Elsa, Spirit of Winter from chapter 1, but your characters to shift onto are far worse, being a 2-cost and a 3-cost Cheshire Cats that are very unlikely to make it through to a turn 5. But the other big problem here is that even shifting on turn 5 likely is only good enough to net you 2 lore anyway, because unless you are really specifically targeting to Wicked Smile the turn you come out, that means you're paying 5 resources to just banish a character that's already damaged that you could probably utilize better cards to do for you anyway that don't even require them to be damaged. And that's kind of where it all goes, is that how much is too much to actually banish characters? Now, I know that this is like one of the cooler arts in the set, and people are really pumped about a Floodborn Cheshire Cat, and that banishing characters on a stick, is good. I just think that this is actually overcosted for what it's worth. I think finding a way to shift 5 is actually way more difficult than you would ever really plan on it being. And in my early testings, honestly, almost nearly impossible. And then when you start going, well, is it okay to play this on 8 because like it has evasive and it still has 2 lore, it's a way to close out the game. And I'm just like, you could just play so many, like you could play Tinkerbell and it almost be the same argument. The difference is that you don't have 6 health, you have 3, but you're still evasive, you're still pressuring the game, and you can utilize that 4 resources to do anything else with, in all honesty. So if it really comes down to the basis of being able to banish damaged characters, then I would just default to playing better cards. Like, having this character be your reliable source of ways to banish characters is pretty weak, and it's honestly just not even a strength of Emerald at all, and it really niches you into having to play more steel damaging cards than you probably actually need, and it's just a lot of things that you're kind of overcompensating for just to play a bad Cheshire Cat. So rather than doing all of those things, just take the cat out of your deck and then refocus your deck onto cards that you actually need and that are actually good. And that way you're never ever worried about this card doing anything except for most likely going into your Inkwell because you actually can't find the correct timing to even use it in the first place. Shere Khan, Menacing Predator, is a 3-cost, 3 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore character for Ruby with the ability of Don't Insult My Intelligence. Whenever one of your characters challenges another character, gain 1 lore. So the first problem with this character is that it's a very interesting way to approach Ruby. It actually seemingly on paper meshes so very well with the concept of reckless and rush and being able to get more out of your characters through gaining lore and challenging. But as much as the reference of Don't Insult My Intelligence is interesting, the ability is too reliant on challenging. And right now, that's hard to do in the metagame. And, for anyone that's really been playing with Rise of the Floodborn already, I've played a ton of games leading up to PAX Unplugged and for my teammates going to GalaxyCon. And in all honesty, this character is just one of those ones where normally you get a lore out of this character because the turn you play it, you're able to utilize it with whatever 1 and 2 cost characters you have, if you even still have them in play, to then get a lore back from challenging. That's great. However, in my experience, 2 things happens after that. Either A, you can't get another challenge, or B, this character actually doesn't make it back to your turn, so you never get more effect out of it anyway. So for a 3-cost, 3/3 with 1 lore itself that is reliant on you having other characters for when they challenge to get the ability, it's just a lot of things to ask for in a metagame that really just isn't allowing challenges that easy. You have to find a way to leverage it, and even going to the extent of cards, like the Elsas that can tap, or like pick-a-fights and things like that. It's just you're kind of going out of your way to play these cards to gain a little incremental value out of just playing naturally more consistent, better cards. And I think it's cute. I think there's likely a time for this card to be good, like similar to the Cinderella that requires a particular metagame to allow it to be at its best. Right now, challenging is out of favor, and most of the time, non-existent. And I think that that's the biggest key problem here, is that this card just is either a little ahead of its time, or it just needs the meta to shift into a more challenging aspect for this to be a better consideration in your Ruby decks. 7 cards that, in all honesty, I think half of them I was really high on early on, but through a couple weeks of testing for PAX Unplugged and GalaxyCon, they just didn't do what I was hoping for them to do. They really fell out of favor. They just weren't good at all, in all honesty. And it's shocking to say that about a couple of the cards on this list. But in all honesty, after removing those cards, decks got better. And I'm giving you this information up front because sometimes you got to realize that cards aren't worth it. You're putting too much effort into making them even playable. And there's so many better options that just are consistency. And a lot of times consistency early on in a metagame is where you want to be. Hopefully some of these cards do fall back into favor, but right now wouldn't be playing them at all. If you're not sure exactly what the metagame is looking like, we have 2 meta reports already in with tons of different decks to look at. Meta Report 1, Meta Report 2. Check them out. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this list and if there's any more to add to it. And lastly, smash that like button for me. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. I will catch you in the next video.